that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 409th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and the astonishing Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
In the flesh. Tom is very predictable. When I say astonishing Tom Fennell, he always says in the flesh. Now, in other ways, he's not quite that predictable, but nevertheless, there we go. Every week we do this show on Thursdays, and we start today being the 11th of March. We start with the previous Thursday with news on energy and climate change, previous Thursday being the 4th of March. These items are all items that come from my blog, geoharvey.com, and you can go there and find the original articles so that you can actually read them. Tom and I will discuss each one
Some
briefly.
of them are well worth reading, and I'll try to alert you to that.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. Let's see. We have people who are watching this can download what I call the script for the show, either from the site where it's being viewed, or I guess it's available in two forms. One is a link to the actual WordPress site that Tom and I use, and the other one is the notes that I do, and
the pictures.
And the pictures, they're all there. So I guess with that, we should probably just go ahead.
Can't dance.
Can't dance. Okay. Our first picture is the inside of a real honest to goodness coal mine. And Tom, did you ever go to the coal mine at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago?
I never did, but I did. I went to a real coal mine in West Virginia.
I knew that you had done that. The closest I ever got to that was that thing in Chicago, and it was one of two things that convinced me that of all the jobs I could do, the one that I would least want to do was working in a coal mine, which means what you have in front of you. And this is an item from CNN. So what do you have for a title, Tom?
Biden's energy secretary vows to leave no worker behind in the clean energy revolution.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like good news.
It does indeed. Fossil fuel workers will not be left behind in the Biden administration's push to embrace clean energy. That's a promise from the new energy secretary, Jennifer Granholm, addressing workers worried about their livelihoods will be disrupted. She's saying the coal miners, the U.S. government is going to try to find them good, well-paying jobs. Same thing for the people in the petrochemicals industries and so forth.
They're not going to be in mining.
No, they're not going to be in mining, and it looks like petrochemicals. We're going to be talking about petrochemicals later on.
Well, in the coal mining country, at least in recent years, these coal miners were getting very well paid.
Yes.
And there's nothing else down there for work.
Well, as I think about it, in the central Appalachians, there's over 500 mountains that have had their tops removed so that they could to get the coal. And you've talked about this.
I've seen that, and it's horrible.
Yeah. All of those are sites where things can be put up like solar farms and so forth. I don't know if that's going to be done, but I think there's jobs available for a lot of these people.
Well, there certainly can be, and the places like West Virginia, the government's aware of that, and they know they have a very large problem.
Yep.
And they'll solve it.
Yep. We have to move on, Tom. Here's a picture
we got a little takeaway there.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
How to wean America off fossil fuels while preventing widespread job losses in regions that rely on coal, oil, and natural gas?
Yeah. There you go.
The answer is you need millions of good jobs with benefits.
Right.
And here's some of the jobs: building zero-emission vehicles, upgrading the electric grid, manufacturing pipelines. Well, I don't know that that's such a good one. Mining critical minerals for batteries. There are options.
There's a lot of them. Wind turbine technician is the one that I always think of.
That's a good one.
Our next picture is a picture of Tom Fennell's engine in his Mercedes.
Well, it is an automobile engine, that's for sure.
Tom, I have
engine in my Mercedes doesn't look anything like that.
Yeah, I have to ask you a question, Tom. Have you ever seen an automobile engine that looked that clean before?
Oh yeah.
Have you? I haven't.
Well, like at shows and stuff, you're not going to see it on the road.
Yep. Okay. This item is this story is from Clean Technica. And what do you?
This is an very interesting title.
Yes.
The oil industry is about to become worthless.
Yeah, and that is quoting Morgan Stanley. We are starting to see the transformation underway. In a survey of institutional investors, Morgan Stanley found that 17% of the respondents think internal combustion engine technology has zero or negative value today, and 60% said its value was only slightly positive.
Hey, the times they are changing.
Boy, are they ever. I would never have imagined that.
There's a lot of nice pictures in this article.
Yes, there are. And this picture of what looks like an unused auto engine that was put together into a museum for show is just one of them.
Well, the electric vehicle sector now accounts for a higher stock market valuation than does the legacy auto industry.
Yeah, and that's
going to tell you something.
Yeah, it does, and we see other things coming up too. UBS says, which is a big Swiss bank. This was in today's news. We'll talk about it next week, I think. Said that they expected that VW would come online and it would for electric cars, and it would be challenging Tesla. But that's what it is. Okay, you got more on that, Tom?
No, we got a nice picture of a wind farm, though.
We do. There it is. And you can actually...
That's actually a pretty nice picture.
I think it is. And this particular article is also from Clean Technica. What do you got for it?
The U.S. installed more wind turbine capacity, and I'll repeat that word, capacity, in 2020 than in any other year.
Yeah, according to data published by the Energy Information Administration, 2020 was a record year for wind turbine capacity additions in the U.S. at 14.2 gigawatts. I'm going to say that, what do you think, Tom? That's about like 4 large nuclear power plants just in 1 year coming online?
Yeah, 4. Yeah. I'll go for. I'll go 4.
A previous record was 13.2, so this was 14.2 last year as opposed to the previous record of 13.2, which was in 2012. The total wind turbine capacity in the United States is now 118 gigawatts.
Gigawatts is megawatts, baby.
That's a lot of wind power.
A lot of watts.
Yeah.
Well, in 2020, the U.S. installed more wind power than any other generating technology. And some of that happened right here in Vermont.
Did it?
Over near Bennington.
Yes. They're expanding the Searsburg plant.
Exactly.
Yeah, I had forgotten that.
The Energy Information Administration expects wind's share of electricity generation to increase in 2021. Duh.
Well, okay. What they're saying is we just set a record, and we're going to set another record.
Set another one.
And, they're not letting up on this. And, I think they're probably right about that from what I've been able to see. But, there it is.
Let's move on here. You got a couple of graphs, which are actually only one graph.
Yeah, the graph on the right, as Tom was just saying, is actually part of the graph on the left. And
it's that little box at the bottom.
It's the little box in the bottom.
It shows one thing. It shows renewables are increasing in many states.
But look at that, Tom. Here we've got in the thing on the left, the difference between these two is that the thing on the left includes California. They're saying that small scale solar capacity in California is probably up to 11 gigawatts.
It is dwarfing the rest of the country.
Yeah, but 11 gigawatts is a lot of electricity. That's a lot of capacity.
That's for sure.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And this is from Clean Technica also. What do you have for a title for it?
California, Texas, and Florida had large, small-scale solar capacity increases in 2020.
What, you know, is that an oxymoron, large, small-scale solar capacity? I don't know. Every time I think of an oxymoron, I think of a friend of mine who unfortunately died I suppose.
Well, it's large increases of small-scale solar.
I know that. He had a bumper sticker that said, "I was an oxymoron."
For the FBI.
No, he was military intelligence. And an oxymoron.
Small-scale solar includes any installations that is connected to the grid and it's less than a megawatt.
Okay, which means it could be, in fact, a commercial small-scale solar thing.
Well, less than a megawatt is kind of small.
It is, but
what we have here in Brattleboro is 5 megawatts.
Right. Yeah, but you could have commercial installations that fall into that group. That would include a lot of capacity that would be from commercial operations that are on rooftops of businesses.
We've got that right here in town.
Yeah.
There's a couple places that, like, they fix cars and stuff like that.
Yes, that's right. There's a beautiful array on that car place on Burge Street.
Exactly. I was thinking about that one.
Yeah, it's really, really nice looking. Okay, and let's see. What did I? Oh, I haven't read the synopsis on this.
Well, that'd be a good idea.
Yeah. Did you read the title? I guess you did. As of December 2020, the states with the most small-scale solar capacity were California at 10.6 gigawatts, New Jersey at 1.9. You notice that's a big difference. Massachusetts at 1.8. Of the 4.5 gigawatts of small-scale solar capacity added in the U.S. in 2020, 31% were in California. Another thing about this that really kind of strikes me is, when I was in college, I'm talking about the 1960s here, we used to talk about the possibility of wind turbines and solar PVs and things like that, providing large amounts of electricity to the United States. The three states that they talk about in this synopsis, really, that they give the figures on, are California, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. New Jersey and Massachusetts are both in the Northeast. And when I was in college, I remember people saying, I wonder if it's ever going to work in the Northeast.
Well, we'll be talking a little bit about Massachusetts again.
Yeah, we will.
This time it's wind.
Yes, that's right. Okay, more on this, or should we go on?
Well, California is way ahead.
Yeah.
Texas and Florida have less small-scale solar capacity, but it's growing rapidly.
Well, if you look at the graph, you can see that Texas, which is the third from the bottom on the right, is growing rapidly. And so is Florida.
Starting to go exponential.
Yes, that's right. Okay. Should we go on?
Why not?
Okay.
We've got a picture of a guy wearing a hard hat.
He's afraid
he's looking at a solar array.
That's right. He's got a hard hat and there's a blue sky above him. What's he worried about having fall on his head?
Well, a hard hat is a badge of authority.
Yes, that's right. PV Magazine gave us this one. What do you have for title, Tom?
New York State adopts rules to streamline large renewable energy project reviews.
Yeah.
They get rid of some of the red tape.
They're getting rid of red tape. New York State has adopted new rules designed to streamline the siting and construction of renewable energy facilities of 25 megawatts or more. Now, these are obviously the larger facilities. The regulations result from a law, enacted in April of 2020 to consolidate environmental review and permitting processes. One of the biggest problems with getting renewable energy in place is
red tape.
Red tape, permitting. It can last. Well, what was it that we used to talk about? Was it Cape Wind? It was down there suffering for decades because of one of the people in the Koch family and one of the people in the Kennedy family, and then finally the fact that nobody was willing to give it any approvals under the Trump administration.
That's historically correct.
Yeah, and there it is. It can really make a mess out of things.
Well, we got another rather nice picture here.
We do.
Unfortunately, that of a storm.
Well, I looked at that, and the first thing that came to mind was I thought that must be the edge of the eye of a hurricane, and then I realized that is not the edge of the eye of a hurricane. Those clouds wouldn't have looked anything like that if they were in hurricane. I don't know what that is. I don't know what kind of storm that is, but it's beautiful, wouldn't you say?
I think so.
Yeah, this is from KLFY, probably a TV station.
It is. It's a radio station, maybe a TV station, but yeah, that's exactly right. Humans, not nature, are the causes of changes in the Atlantic hurricane cycles.
Yeah, this was interesting. The idea of the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation, I'm not going to say that again, may have been dealt a deadly blow by Michael Mann, who named it. He was the guy who named that thing.
Yep.
And
he's an important guy, by the way.
Oh, he is indeed. He's the guy who gave us the hockey stick graph. And I see my note here has his name spelled with one N. It's actually two. He concludes the AMO is likely an artifact of climate change in the modern era, and in pre-industrial times it resulted from big volcanic eruptions. So it's two different things that are going on here.
AMO means, I'll define it really. The Atlantic hurricane activity seems to flow in roughly 60 year waves.
Yeah.
Active for around 30 years and then inactive for around 30 years.
Yeah.
And scientists believe this was due to a natural warming cycle called multi-decadal oscillation.
Yes.
But man is saying, no, it's human forcing from rising carbon emissions.
This is a guy who contributed quite a lot to the idea that this was happening. And so what he's doing here.
Certainly, you got to admit, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, and he has changed his mind, apparently, on this.
Well, the more we allow the planet to warm, the worse off we will be.
I absolutely agree with you on that. There's no question. Just for anybody who's listening, Tom and I disagree about once in a while.
Well, we agree on this one. This is a quote from Mann.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on here to Saturday, March 6th, one of the two articles we have about flutterbys.
Flutterbys, there we go. And this is from Daily Science.
And that's a monarch, and that's a beautiful butterfly.
Isn't it?
And it's common around here. But
it used to be.
Well, around here it still is, but it's failing badly in the West Coast.
I have to say, Tom, I just said we disagree about things sometimes. I think the numbers around Brattleboro of these butterflies are down really, really badly. Yes, I see a few of them every summer. It used to be that if I went out and saw a milkweed plant at the time of year that these guys were laying their eggs, almost any milkweed plant would have a larvae or chrysalis or whatever on it.
Like that, yep.
They don't now. You just don't see them. And I just don't see any evidence of the monarchs. And I will say, a lot of people in Brattleboro are letting milkweed plants grow. They are perennial plants, by the way. And a lot of people are letting them grow because they want these monarchs to thrive. But, okay.
Well, they're pretty. They're nice to look at.
Yeah, they are. Okay, let me read the synopsis. Western butterfly populations are declining at an estimated rate of 1.6% per year, according to a new report that was published this week in Science. That's a peer-reviewed journal. The report looked at 450 species Among them, the western monarch, which is not a species, it's just monarch butterflies living in the West, has undergone a decline of 99.9% since the 1980s. Tom, I can't see how these butterflies can survive out there.
Well, what's happening to their detriment is warming in the autumn.
Yeah.
And the butterfly larvae exist, but there's nothing for them to eat.
Yeah. Yeah. There's another thing, by the way, that also causes trouble, and it is in Brattleboro, and that's a plant called dog strangling vine, believe it or not.
I never heard of that one.
Well, they're around, and they have a pod which tapers on both ends. And they climb up. They have a tiny, tiny, tiny purple flower, but they're closely related to milkweed. The thing is, milkweed plant, one of the things about monarchs is they survive for a long time because the milkweed plant is toxic. And they can deal with the toxin, but anybody who decides to eat a monarch butterfly is going to find out pretty quickly that they can't. So the guys who like eating butterflies don't eat monarch butterflies. They learn pretty quickly. But the problem is the dog strangling vine. The monarch butterflies will think that it is milkweed and deposit eggs on it, but the larvae can't survive on it, because the poison is something they can't deal with. So, it would be worthwhile for people to take a look at that and try to figure out a way of, learning what dog strangling vine looks like, and then.
Yeah, I never heard it called that. I'm familiar with what you're talking about, but I never had a name for it.
Yeah, it took me a while to find the name, and I believe there are other names, but that happens to be the name that I remember. So,
well, we got a picture coming up here of a guy speaking.
We do indeed.
And what he's saying is, you can help shape energy in your community.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good message. This is from Clean Technica, and the synopsis says, now FERC. FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, is creating an Office of Public Participation. That is what it's called, Office of Public Participation. After 35 years of dodging the issue, this truly is once in a lifetime chance for reform in a very important U.S. government agency. Once in a lifetime. I hope this is not once in a lifetime, and that the kids who are out there are going to be able to address that agency in the future on an ongoing basis.
Is an important agency.
Yes, it is.
It supervises pipelines, gas terminals, hydropower dams, all of that stuff.
All of that stuff, absolutely.
It also oversees the electric grid's reliability, operations, and prices.
Everywhere except Texas.
Yeah, interesting, isn't that? Well, engaging with FERC is complicated, and that's what this new office is going to offset. It's going to help people navigate FERC's regulatory processes.
Well, that I think is a very good thing. That's
good news.
Yeah, there have been times when I felt like getting on the phone and calling those people and saying, "What is the matter with you?" And now, they're saying people are going to be able to do that in the future. So,
well, that's good news.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. What's that?
I hope they're right.
Well, as I said, it does mean that people are going to be able to express their opinions to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and that commission really has a fair amount of power.
They do.
Yeah.
Not a fair amount. They've got a lot of power.
They've got a lot of power. The basis of FERC, by the way, is the fact that the electricity is sold interstate. So if you're making electricity in Vermont, it could be sold in Massachusetts, New York, whatever. And the federal government has the authority to control interstate trade. And that's why.
That makes sense.
What's that?
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's in the Constitution. The state of Texas decided that it didn't want to be controlled by the federal government. So
well, that was a mistake.
Well, they have found that out recently.
They found it out once before and ignored that.
Well, actually, I think they found it out more than once before, but yeah, they ignored it. And what they did was they said, we can do a better job than the federal government. And in fact, during this last cold outbreak, there were problems in other places besides Texas, but there were not problems like the problems that were in Texas.
I think we're going to touch base on that again in this show.
We are, absolutely. And should we go on to talk about the Cadillac Lyric?
Well, we maybe not be talking much about the Cadillac Lyric, but it's an interesting looking car.
Okay, there is the
it's
Cadillac.
Electric, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's a dome in the background, and I have absolutely no idea what that dome is.
Well, GM and LG Energy Solution plan a second U.S. battery factory. Now, LG stands for something like Living Good, and it's a very large Japanese or Chinese electronics firm.
It's Life's Good, LIFE''S.
Life's Good, exactly, yeah. Right.
And I think it might be Korean, but it's somewhere over in that part of the world.
It's over there, and it's big. And they do a good job. My phone is in LG.
Yeah, I've got LG stuff. They're one of the biggest battery manufacturers in the world.
I'm going to talk about exactly that.
Yep. Clean Technica.
GM and LG Energy Solution, which is a division of LG, plan a second U.S. battery factory. Now,
right.
That's a second battery factory just for them.
Yeah.
Building a battery factory too.
Yeah. Who is building a battery factory? Musk. Oh, yeah, Tesla. Yeah, well, they're all building battery factories all over the place. Because
that's a good idea, I would say.
Yep. This is from Clean Technica. Citing a report by the Wall Street Journal, Autoblog says General Motors and LG Energy Solutions are in the planning stages for a second U.S. battery factory. Currently, the two companies are building a $2.3 billion battery factory next door to the former Lordstown factory in Ohio. Lordstown factory, of course, is a GM plant. So they've already got $2.3 billion that they've committed to a factory, and now they're talking about another one.
Well, this is part of the reason why. GM will introduce 30 new electrified models by 2025. Passenger vehicles will be all electric.
Yeah.
2035.
Yeah. And, people worry about, do we really have enough lithium, for example, to do that? And
well, that's a problem that will have to be solved.
Yeah, but it's going to get solved. We've got
solved. We've talked about that on the show.
Absolutely. There are so many ways to make batteries, and practically everything you could imagine and a whole bunch of things you can't are already under consideration. So there's scientists working on this. Okay, we're up to Sunday, March 7th, and we have a picture of a small wind farm or a part of a big wind farm in the mountains.
This is another nice picture.
Isn't it?
We got some good pictures this week.
We have some good pictures. This is from WIZM News. Again, I think that's probably a TV station.
It's a radio or a TV station.
Yeah, one of them. And
Biden faces steep challenges to reach renewable energy goals.
Yeah, President Joe Biden wants to change the way the U.S. uses energy by expanding our renewable energy, but he will need to navigate a host of challenges, including dealing with COVID-19 pandemic and restoring hundreds of thousands of lost jobs to get it done.
The pandemic has cost renewable energy industry about 500,000 jobs.
Yeah, but it cost other places a lot more than that. And the coal industry.
Oh yeah, we're just happen to be talking about renewable energy here. Yeah, you're right.
The coal industry, 500,000 jobs for the renewable energy industry is maybe 15%. The coal industry is down 35%. And with renewable energy, it's going to recover. With the coal industry, I don't know that that's going to recover all that well. I have a feeling that it's not. I think it will recover a little bit, but not the way.
What, the coal industry?
Yeah.
Sell your coal mining stock now, baby.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's, and I should point out neither Tom nor I is a stock advisor, but nevertheless, the coal.
I don't know about you, but I don't have any stock.
I don't either. I used to, just for fun, I'd buy stock in companies that I thought were cool, and they were all tiny companies with cheap stock, and I didn't make any money on it.
Well, let's move along back here to the Fukushima plant.
Yes.
Of it.
We have a picture, which might be a different picture than the one that we had when you looked at this earlier, Tom. I don't know.
The picture I got is a guy looking at a reactor unit. Yeah,
this is a different picture that I'm showing, and the reason is because when I put this into our blog, I had that old picture, but I didn't have a title for it, and somehow without that title, I don't have a credit for it. So I wanted the plant to be properly credited. So I went out and found a different one, which is 3 guys walking around and seeing the wreckage of the Fukushima plant. And believe me, Tom, it's wreckage. This is from the...
Oh, well, I looked at a video of the wave.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Coming in on shore in Japan.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, whoa. That wave was 14 meters tall, and the seawall was 5.7, which means that
14 meters is almost 50 feet.
Yeah, and it's like that wave was unbelievable how fast the water was coming in, and then because there was a seawall, it couldn't go back out again. Only part of it could go out. Because the wall was
there and it swamped everything.
Yeah, the wall was retaining it. And the thing that's infuriating about that is that not all that many miles up the coast, there was a town, I don't remember the name of it, but a man in the town who was the mayor said, I remember a tsunami that hit in 1933, I think it was. And it was, the waves in that tsunami were at a maximum of 27 meters. He said, we need a seawall. And they built a seawall at that town. And when this last one came, their seawall, which was, I think, 15 meters, was topped in that location by about 1 meter. And they had big puddles form in the town. But nobody drowned, except for one person disappeared, a person who had crossed to the other side of the seawall to make sure that his boat was okay. This nuclear power plant should have had a seawall that would have stopped the waves that it got.
Nobody, they wanted to, but nobody wanted to pay for it.
Yeah, well, there you go. If you're not going to pay for the safety at a nuclear power plant, you shouldn't pay for the nuclear power plant at all. Anyway.
That's what this one's all about, is safety.
Yeah.
10 years after Fukushima, safety is still nuclear power's greatest challenge.
This is from the Kiowa County Press. And by the way, the city actually of Greensburg, Kansas, is the county seat of Kiowa County. And the people down there brag that they are 100% powered by wind 100% of the time. On March 11th, 2011, Japan's northeast coast was hit by an earthquake and tsunami that swept entire towns away in seconds. An investigation concluded that the nuclear disaster that followed at Fukushima was an accident waiting to happen.
Bingo.
Safety is still an issue. And by the way, that report was just recently issued because it was delayed because of the radiation.
No kidding.
So, yeah, we should move on, Tom. You got more on that?
Well, 2 decades later, the nuclear industry has yet to fully address the safety concerns
Absolutely.
that Fukushima exposed.
Yeah. Okay.
And it says also these problems are far from unique to Japan.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Okay, our next item has a DOI. Well, it's got the top 3/4 of the DOI logo, and it comes from Clean Technica.
Science wins at the Interior Department.
The Department of Interior announced that it is rescinding Secretarial Order 3369, which sidelined scientific research and its use in the agency's decisions. That order restricted the DOI, the Department of Interior, from using scientific studies that did not make all data publicly available, including private data. So this means that if they wanted to do a study and the study included your name and address, or you as a you know, the any private information, they couldn't say, we have this private information, but we're not telling you who it relates to. They would have to give your name, whatever data it is, or the study can't be published. And that was an order that was clearly intended to prevent studies from being published.
I was trying to figure out the words to say exactly that.
Yeah.
Well, let's move along here. We got a nice picture again.
We do indeed.
Texas.
And we are up to Monday, March 8th, and this is an item also from Clean Technica.
You look at the snow in those trees, it looks pretty, but I'm sure it destroyed those trees.
Well, I mean, that's a lot of weight to put on limbs, and
exactly,
those trees are just not used to that weight, you know, and there were a lot of trees that were torn apart. And you were saying we're going to get back to ERCOT, and we're back to ERCOT. We are.
ERCOT charged $16 billion too much for power.
Yeah, ERCOT, by the way, is the Electricity Reliability Council of Texas.
That's the Texas grid.
That's the Texas grid. ERCOT, the Texas grid operator, left wholesale electricity prices at the legal maximum for 2 days longer than necessary, overcharging power companies $16 billion in the process during the winter storm that caused massive failures, and independent market monitor shows. Can you imagine this? Your pipes have frozen. Your apartment is completely everything in it is destroyed by water that's been sprayed all over the place because of the frozen pipes. You haven't got electricity. You've got a horrible chore in front of you. COVID-19 is going on. Maybe you don't even have a job, and these guys are adding to your power bill in a way that is absolutely unconscionable. $16 billion worth. So I don't know what to say about that.
I'm wordless. I'm thinking about the same thing. Well, we're back to butterflies now.
We are back to butterflies. I don't know what species that is.
I do.
Oh, do you really? Good for you.
That's called a blue morpho.
Blue morpho.
And that's a big butterfly. That's 5 to 8 inches in diameter. That's a huge butterfly.
Wow. Where do these guys live?
Well, they come from Africa.
Oh, do they really?
I think it's Africa.
This is a really...
No, I'm sorry. I'm wrong about that. South and Central America.
Okay. This is a really good picture for people who want to know what the difference between a butterfly and a moth is. You'll notice that the antennae on this thing are just little sticks. Butterflies sometimes have a little knob on the end, but basically they're just little antennae, where a moth antenna looks like a feather almost. And the other thing is that butterflies, when they're resting, have their wings spread out like this. Moths have them kind of folded up.
So they fold them.
Yeah.
Well, this is a dub, but I'm going to say it anyhow.
Okay.
Want to save butterflies? Use less pesticides.
This is from KOLO, which might also be a radio station. Butterflies have been in decline for the past 40 years, and new methods of conservation and management of butterfly habitat, like less backyard pesticide use, may be needed to stop the decline, according to a report from the University of Nevada, Reno.
Well, maybe should be changed to R.
Yeah, the report was published in the journal Science. Yes, as Tom said, this is like a big duh. But you know, this picture also brings another thing to mind for me, which is we live in a society that is run on the basis of what is called a free market. And
but it's not free.
Well, I absolutely agree with you, Tom. If it's not regulated, it's not going to be free. If it's not regulated by the government, it's going to be regulated by the industries that are biggest. And so that's one of the reasons why renewable energy has been moving in as slowly as it has over the last 20 years or so, because they've been kept out of the market, I believe, by the fossil fuels industry. And
by the way, this article is not about the butterflies.
Yes. Okay. But the butterfly brings this issue up. In order to have a free market, what they call a free market, they're saying that everything has to be regarded according to its economic value, which means that you've got to be able to monetize everything. If it can't be monetized, it doesn't have a value, and it gets left out of the calculation. This guy is left out of the calculation.
It's all about making money.
It is. And, all right, you love your kids. How much is your love worth in dollars? That's what's wrong with the so-called free market.
I looked up about this butterfly. It's interesting. It's not blue.
What is it?
It's kind of brownish.
Oh, is it?
What you're seeing there is the light reflected from the scales.
Oh, yes, of course. Iridescence. Okay. We have, do you have more on this one, Tom?
Now let's move along. We got another pretty one here.
We do indeed. This is a picture of, by golly, wind turbines. Now, that's wind turbines, Tom, because it says so in the caption.
Renewables supplied 20.6% of U.S. electricity in 2020.
Yep, this is from
a lot
Clean
of charts in this article, but
yes,
some are interactive. They're kind of fun.
They're fun, and unfortunately, you can't put them up on a TV show because you got to have them work. And, anyway, U.S. electricity generation data are in from the Energy Information Administration for 2020. Renewable energy accounted for 20.6% of U.S. electricity generation last year. Wind power led with 8.3%, followed of the U.S. electricity. This is the amount generated. It's not capacity. Generation.
This is stuff they've actually used.
This is the actual electricity that was generated and put on the grid. Wind was followed by hydropower, and then solar power came in third at 3.3%. And again, I want to say I don't believe that, because I don't believe it just by itself, because I would want to know, did they actually try to include in that the small scale solar power that we were talking about?
I don't think they did.
I don't think they did either. I think if they had put that in, it would have been more like almost 5%.
They're talking about here, I think, in industrial solar.
I think they are. Yeah.
Well, in renewables supplied 20.6%. In 2018, it was 17.5%, so it's growing.
It's growing fast, and renewables grew last year despite the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, they did. 80% of new U.S. power supply came from renewables.
Right, and what happened was coal generation basically fell very, very sharply last year, after it had already been full.
Much more sharply than I think the industry wanted to happen.
Well, the industry doesn't want it to happen at all. They want to get all their coal generation back again. But of course, that isn't going to happen because the utilities are cutting down the coal generation plants. Navajo generating station, as you know, we had a picture of that thing being blown up last week. So,
yeah, we did. Well, we've talked about that. That's an important story, really.
It is. I think that was the largest coal-burning power plant in the western United States. It might have been the largest coal-burning plant in the entire United States.
I think you're right. It was a very large plant.
When it was cut down, it was not just that plant that was stopped. It was also the nearby coal mine, which had its output
They were tied together.
They were tied together. They had a railroad that went between the two, as I recall, and that railroad didn't connect with anything else in the world. You couldn't get there except by highway. And now that the generating station is down, the coal mine is down too.
Well, there's an interesting graph there of the current sources of electric power. And they're in this order: natural gas, nuclear, coal, wind, water, and PV.
That is capacity?
That's current sources. That's capacity.
Yeah. But coal. We had an article, I think it was 2 weeks ago, about the fact that the capacity factor for coal had fallen below 50%, which means half the time those plants are not even running.
Well, it's costing too much to run.
Yeah. Okay. Are we done with that one, Tom?
Yeah, we got a nice picture of the vineyard.
We have a picture of the Vineyard Wind project, which is not being built yet.
It's not there yet.
But is this is from
well, this is interesting because they canceled this, but they've resurrected it, and it's going to be a significant. It's going to be a significant plant.
Yeah, and they canceled it they withdrew the application for a period of about 1 month because they were worried that they were going to get an action on it from the Trump administration. And they wanted to have this thing acted on by the Biden administration. So it was a very short withdrawal. And okay, did you read the title?
I looked at a map of this, and it's very significant.
It is.
Biden
indeed.
administration advances major offshore wind farm.
Right. The next to last requirement for Vineyard Wind project to move forward was the final environmental impact statement from the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, which you see abbreviated BOEM sometimes. It now has that. With the next step, construction can start in federal waters 12 miles south of Martha's Vineyard. Well, the nearest part is 12 miles south of Martha's Vineyard, which means that on an extremely clear day,
exactly,
if you have
extends from there.
Yeah. And you might be able to see a few wind turbines if you look really closely and you have really good eyes. You could see them on an extremely clear.
Or a good strong pair of binoculars.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah. Okay.
Well, this is going to be an 800 megawatt array.
Yeah.
So it's going to be significant.
Yeah.
And the turbines are going to be spaced a mile apart.
With the nearest one 12 nautical miles away. And I think that's probably about 15 miles. Am I right that was 12 nautical miles? Yes, it's 12.
It's bigger than a regular mile. I don't know the difference.
Regular mile is 5,280 feet, and a nautical mile is 6,080 feet. So, yeah. Okay. Our next item is from CNN, and there is a picture of a drought. I went and found this, which is why it's from Unsplash.
Is that what that is? It's a drought, huh?
That's what they call a drought. Well, either that or it's a
drought. Multi-year drought builds in western U.S. with little relief in sight.
You know, this has been going on for over a decade. You know, really, Tom, we've got a serious problem. While it has been written this year while much has been written this year on atmospheric rivers, avalanche warnings, and even flash flooding, the western half of the United States is experiencing a crushing drought. While parts of the Northeast are soggy, 80% of the land in the western U.S. faces some sort of official category of drought. Official category of drought, I think they're including a category which is not called drought. It is just called abnormally dry, but which is, drier than normal. But nevertheless, that's what you say is true, and it's interesting because Vermont is in that category. Much of it is, and some of it
to their map here.
Yeah, and some of it is actually in mild drought, which is the next one, a more difficult one. Okay, do you have more on that?
They find drought here a second. It's not just a lack of rainfall; it is a prolonged precipitation deficit.
Yeah, which can include snow.
All things.
Yes, it can include
fire.
Snow. Absolutely, and they, the question is what's happening with groundwater, what's happening with plants that have to get that have to put their roots down to get to that water. Okay, our next item.
And just to make things worse, the winter snowpack is not sufficient to dent the drought.
Yep. Our next item is from Energy.
Let's move along here. We got.
we got
Energy storage news.
That's right, and we have Wärtsilä, and you know this. I look at that picture of that barge, and it bothers me. And the reason is because it was photoshopped, where they did a rendering on top of a picture of water, and there's the way it was done, it looks like it's floating in the air above the water. But nevertheless, doesn't it? It does, doesn't it?
They haven't figured out how to do that one yet.
Yeah, I guess, or at least the person who did it.
This is actually interesting, though.
Yeah.
This is an interesting article. Wärtsilä to install first of its kind floating battery storage solution in Southeast Asia.
We've seen floating wind turbines and then floating solar arrays, and now we're looking at floating batteries. Wärtsilä Corporation will deploy
you could say what you're going to say, and I'll explain that a little bit.
Okay.
Because it makes sense.
Yeah, they will deploy a floating battery system to provide ancillary services for a thermal power facility in the Philippines. The battery system will provide 54 megawatts, 32 megawatt hours of electric energy storage for a 100 megawatt diesel powered barge. And I want to point out here, they're not backing up solar or wind here. They're backing up diesel. You know, the fact that something is done with fossil fuels.
If you look at that picture.
Yeah.
If you look at that picture, I think everything in red is like a diesel engine.
That could be, yeah.
So these things are a bunch of a barge with a bunch of generators on them.
Yep. And
you can't build a power plant on a barge. I mean, you can't build a regular kind of power plant.
Well, yeah, it would have to be specially designed. They just collect it. Yeah, it would have to be specially designed.
I think.
But you know,
it's hard to get something the size of a Yankee to float.
The people who really hate,
due to limited land.
Yeah.
Due to limited land, power plants on floating barges have been seen as an answer to meeting energy demand around the world.
Yeah.
And this company, Wärtsilä, has already installed 1,500 megawatts of capacity through 25 internal combustion engine power barges.
Wärtsilä, by the way, is also the company.
So what they're doing. Oh.
Hello, Tom. You're kind of fading in and out. Are you moving your mouth relative to your microphone? You there?
I haven't moved it. It's right here on my crust.
Okay. Wärtsilä is a company that has in the past made huge engines, and one of the things they've made is diesel engines that are designed to power ships.
Yep.
And they had a diesel engine that we talked about on the show several years ago, which was a one-cylinder diesel engine big enough to power a ship.
And a guy could get into that cylinder.
A guy could have, if the cylinder hadn't been so, made of metal, which means that it's going to conduct heat away very fast. I would think a guy could unroll a sleeping bag in there and sleep for the night. The thing was huge. It was like 6.5 feet long and 4 feet wide or something like that. And, but Wärtsilä has been moving more and more into renewable energy and storage. So
in parts of South Pacific, where there's a bunch of small islands that form a country, this makes sense. You build one of these things in a factory, you float it on shore.
Absolutely.
And the island's got power.
Yeah, and the Philippines is nothing but islands. It's some of the islands are kind of big. But,
and what's Jakarta? What country?
Indonesia.
Indonesia. That's all islands.
Yeah, we've got countries with tiny islands and relatively small islands like the Solomons and so forth. Okay, we have an item that is coming up. We're up to Wednesday the 10th.
Got a picture of Venice there.
There is a picture of the Doge's Palace You think that Doge would have liked seeing this in his front yard? I don't think so.
I imagine he had.
Well, I don't know. We have sunny day flooding, but when a Doge lived in Venice, there wasn't any sunny day flooding yet. This item is from CNN.
It was that bad then, huh?
Yeah, no, it wouldn't have been. That would have been a long time ago. This is from CNN.
Sea level rising is increasing fastest in populous coastal areas.
Right. And this is interesting.
That's not good news.
No, it's not. Coastal communities are experiencing sea level rises that are 4 times worse than the global water rise, a study says.
New York City is a coastal community.
Yeah, well, so is Boston, and so is, just go down the seacoast. Washington, D.C., for practical purposes, is sediment production, groundwater pumping, and extraction of materials from the ground all cause the land to sink, compounding the effects of rising sea level.
Well, global mean sea level rise has been about 1/10 of an inch per year over the past 2 decades.
Yeah.
But along the coast, it's 4 times that.
Right. Okay. Do you have more on that?
I do, but I'll skip it.
Okay. We have an item from Clean Technica, and this is about a RollsRoyce airplane called the Spirit of Innovation.
That's very interesting.
Isn't it?
RollsRoyce gets 1 step closer to the fastest electric plane.
Yeah, they're going to try this thing out pretty soon. RollsRoyce has a small propeller aircraft with a 400 kilowatt electric powertrain pulling juice from the latest batteries. 400 kilowatts, by the way, I'm going to say that it's probably about 550 horsepower.
I would say exactly the same thing.
Yeah, it is called the Spirit of Innovation, and the company expects it to be able to exceed 300 miles per hour. If it pulls that off, it'll be the fastest electric plane ever flown.
Well, you got to start thinking of Rolls-Royce as something other than really expensive, old-looking cars.
Yeah, the article makes that pretty clear, doesn't it?
Rolls has quite a name in aviation.
Yeah.
They are the world's 2nd biggest manufacturer of aircraft engines. I never knew that.
Well, I knew that they've been a big manufacturer of aircraft engines for a long time. The Rolls-Royce aircraft engines were used in British planes during the Second World War.
Well, what they're looking at here is the urban air mobility market. These takeoff and land things that we've talked about.
Yeah, I don't think they're thinking about this plan being anything but a record setter. They
right now, but that's where they're moving.
Yeah, they have a lot of reasons to want to do the electric planes.
Well, it's going to be the future.
Okay, our last item is a wind farm. We have a picture.
Is that what that is?
I think it is. And this is from Environment and Energy Leader.
Chevron updates plans to increase renewable energy and carbon offsets.
Chevron Corporation announced plans to increase return on capital employed and lower carbon intensity. The company has exceeded its 2023 upstream carbon intensity reduction targets 3 years ahead of schedule, and it has set new targets that are lower. And I think that's significant. This is an oil company. It's an American oil company. And of all of the companies in the world resisting the idea of going to renewable energy and dealing with climate change, the ones that are the worst are the American oil companies, I think.
Well, they're taking a big step here. They're trying to capture all of the CO2 that comes out of their operations and sequester it.
Yep. Okay, that brings us actually to the end of our show, Tom. We have no time left as far as I can tell. And so I'm going to flip to the last slide and say we are wishing everybody a fantastically gorgeous week. And I guarantee to everyone, I am waving, and I know I can't see him, but I know Tom is waving too.
Just visualize Tom waving, you'll have it.
It's easy to do. I've seen it many times. Okay, Tom, thank you very much, and I hope I hope everybody comes back next time. Bye-bye.
Adios.